As we get older, so do the people around us, including those that we look up to and grew up with, even from a distance. And it's not something easy to accept that someone you used to idolize is becoming older and weaker with passing time. Part of becoming an adult is seeing the same heroes of your childhood grow old and, although it hurts, watching them ultimately pass away. Bruce Willis, for many people, myself included, is one of those old school heroes. A badass by definition, the stereotypical action hero, a true man's man. Having starred in blockbuster classics such as Die Hard, Pulp Fiction, and Armageddon, he is one of the all-time greats. He is an inspiration for many, one that people consider to be aging with style and grace. This image was shattered, however, when in February of 2023, Bruce Willis' family announced that he had been diagnosed with frontotemporal dementia, shortened to FTD, at the age of 67. This news was met with great shock and sadness by the general public. But why is that so? What is behind Bruce Willis' diagnosis and what does it imply for his current and future life? This is what we'll look into today. Hello everybody, my name is Doc Feedy and welcome back to the channel. I'm a MD and I like to talk about a wide array of true stories with a medical touch that people such as you and I have went through. So if you like what I do, stick around and let's get into this case. Before talking about Bruce Willis' illness, let's go back in time and look at the man behind the myth. Bruce Willis was born on the 19th of March 1955 on German soil as the son of a US soldier stationed in Germany. He was one of 4 siblings. At the age of 2, his family and him moved back to the US, to New Jersey specifically, where he'd spent his childhood. Remarkably, the young Bruce Willis grew up with stuttering significantly, something that a lot of people actually struggle with 1% of the world population being affected, and more so, 5% of all children going through a phase of stuttering. More importantly though, Willis found out that being on a stage and acting helped him to stutter less, making him join the drama club in school and eventually a drama program at Montclair State University. This decision to literally act against the stutter would end up changing his life inevitably. After moving to New York City in 1977 to pursue his acting career, he prevailed through hard work and dedication, extending his filmography, winning awards, and making a name for himself as one of Hollywood's most renowned action stars. In 1987, he married his fellow acting colleague Demi Moore, with whom he had 3 children with and was married to for almost 11 years before divorcing amicably, the latter still being in Willis' life and supporting him to this day. After a failed engagement in 2004, he was married for the second time in 2009 to British-American model Emma Hemming, having another 2 daughters with her, and they are still together to this day. In all metrics, it truly seemed that Bruce Willis had lived the American dream. He had over 100 appearances in movies and television, voiceover roles, and had won countless awards, including a star on the prestigious Walk of Fame. He had a loving wife, a supportive ex-wife, and a total of 5 children who were all successful in their own ways and loved him. He was well regarded, a legend of an actor with an undefeated legacy for modern pop culture. And given all of that, the result of his hard work should have been a well-deserved and peaceful retirement. But unfortunately, this is not what happened. In March of 2022, a statement on social media was made by Rumor Willis' account, who is Bruce's eldest daughter. In this statement, the Willis family jointly announced that Bruce was suffering from a condition called aphasia, and that this condition had a negative impact on his thinking and would force him to retire from acting. This announcement shocked fans and the general public alike, and soon the media began reporting extensively on Bruce Willis' condition. Acting colleagues began coming out that there had been a prior decline in Bruce Willis' ability to study texts and perform on set during the last few years of his career. When I personally first saw the headlines at the time, I felt saddened, but I was also somewhat curious, because aphasia is not a separate condition in itself. It is a disorder and a symptom of something larger. Let me explain to you what aphasia is. Aphasia is a language disorder, simply put. However, due to the human linguistic system being so complex, it can affect many facets of our communication: phonation, articulation, writing, understanding, grammar. Some forms of aphasia lead to a problem of expressing yourself, while being fully receptive. Other forms of aphasia lead you to being confused and not understanding your surroundings. Some lead you to parrot the words you just heard. One leads you to lose your speech melody. While fascinating to see and study, they are terrifying examples of how small changes in our brain structures can so deeply affect us. At the time, it was not known from what form of aphasia exactly Bruce Willis was suffering, and more specifically, the reason behind it was not known either. Whether he had had a stroke, a tumor, or something else. With intensive speech therapy, people with aphasia might be able to recover, depending on the given cause. So initially, there was hope for him to return to his old self. Things publicly got quiet, until almost a year later, another announcement was made, pinpointing to the exact cause of his aphasia. Bruce Willis was suffering from a condition called frontotemporal dementia, or FTD in short. To understand the severity of Bruce Willis's diagnosis, we must first talk about dementia in general, because dementia is not just dementia. Many people consider Alzheimer's disease and dementia as synonyms, and while yes, Alzheimer's disease is the most common form of dementia, there are many more subgroups of illnesses leading to dementia, such as Parkinson's disease, Huntington's disease, or Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease. All of these conditions are very different, but can all lead to the symptom complex known as dementia. Dementia is a syndrome, a result of cerebral nerve cell damage. Per definition, it has to be chronic. It has to be progressive for at least 6 months. It impacts higher brain functions such as memory, learning, understanding, orientation, thinking, and/or speech. For diagnosis, alterations in alertness or sensory organs must be excluded. And lastly, for the diagnosis, activities of daily life such as work or social life must be significantly impacted by the aforementioned symptoms. Think about some of the following scenarios you went through yourself in your daily life, probably. You come home and you realize that you've forgotten to buy something on your grocery list. You misremember someone's birthday. You keep looking for the TV remote because you don't remember where you put it. I'm sure that some, if not many of you, joked around with your peers that you're starting to get dementia. I certainly made those jokes. But these small occurrences are minuscule compared to the confusion, disorientation, and forgetfulness that people with dementia experience. I've witnessed dementia patients who were unable to open doors, who kept walking endlessly through our hallways, constantly forgetting where they were, forgetting the faces of their spouses and children, reading the same magazine pages repeatedly. This is why a dementia diagnosis is so life-altering for those afflicted and the people around them. It not only implies a slow regression into a state of total dependency, but it also implies a loss of identity. For me personally, the most cruel thing about dementia is not only that it robs you of your future, but that it also robs you of your past, eroding the memories you've built over the years. Frontotemporal dementia, or FTD, is one of many phases of dementia, but it is unlike others and quite the complex entity. There are actually many subgroups of FTD in terms of genetics and symptom manifestation. This is because, as the name implies, it affects both the frontal and temporal lobes in the brain, but to differing degrees from person to person. These lobes have very different functions, and that is what makes FTD so fascinating, because it allows us exactly to see what parts of the brain make up our individual human behavior. To be more precise, there are 2 subgroups of FTD depending on the symptoms displayed. And these symptoms are dependent on whether the decay of neurons is frontal or temporal. Patients with a primarily frontal or frontotemporal degeneration show behavioral anomalies, hence the name behavioral variant FTD. This is because the frontal lobe is involved in all sorts of executive functions, planning, motivation, inhibition, and attention. This form of FTD is the most common. People afflicted by this form can not only lose the ability to execute complex tasks, they can lose motivation until reaching total apathy and becoming total mutes. They can become emotionally cold and recluse. On the other side of the spectrum, people with this form of FTD can become restless and disinhibited. They can become compulsive, aggressive, display repetitive behaviors. They can become hyper-oral with a fixation on sweets, binge eating and tobacco, becoming emotionally unstable, and going against societal norms. Secondly, there's those with FTD afflicted with a one- or two-sided decay of the temporal lobe only. This form is the more rare of the two, and progresses more slowly, but can morph into the first behavioral form of FTD with time. People with temporal degeneration suffer mostly from speech issues, such as outlined before, along with issues in memory and cognition. And from what it seems like from afar, without having the full spectrum of information or having talked to the man himself, it does seem that Bruce Willis seems to be affected by the latter subgroup. But this distinction for the moment doesn't matter. No matter the subgroup, FTD in its essence is incurable. It is inevitably lethal. It makes up 5% of all dementias, and for people under 65 years old, it is the second leading cause behind Alzheimer's disease. And with an onset in his 60s, Bruce Willis seems to be in its typical manifestation age. Diagnosis is usually made in combination with clinical testing and imaging of the brain, where the frontal and/or temporal lobes are seen to be smaller. Unfortunately, there is no disease-modifying treatment. The only medical therapy that can be done is purely symptomatic, such as antidepressants for mood alterations or sleep disturbances. Ergo and speech therapy can slow down cognitive decline, but can ultimately not stop it. The average life expectancy after symptom onset is 8 to 10 years, according to current data. After all, it seems like a very cruel twist of fate that the very reason Bruce Willis got into acting in his young years was because of his speech patterns. And now it was his speech again that led to the premature end of his acting career, and was the harbinger of a terminal cognitive decline into dementia. So, after we've went through the essence of frontotemporal dementia, what can we expect for the future? Well, quite frankly, I don't know. Nobody knows what the future will truly hold for Bruce Willis in the end. Certainly not me on the other side of a computer screen, none of his acting peers, and none of his fans, and none of the journalists. Only his closest family members can and will know, but even they are limited in what they can do. But there is at least one comforting thing to know, and that is that Bruce Willis is not alone. That he has a tremendous support group, as shown in this video shortly posted after the announcement of his diagnosis.
Happy birthday, dear Diana. Just like that dog. Happy birthday to you.
Bruce Willis and the legacy he has cemented will be remembered for a long time to come. He is cherished in many ways. He's an idol, a fictional hero to many, and an actual hero to his family. Thank you for watching.